Can I first start by saying that an attack on the British Jewish community is an attack on all of us. It's an attack on Britain, full stop. And you will have seen the Prime Minister chairing COBRA, the emergency meeting after the awful, appalling, abhorrent events of this week. And of course, it's so tragic that is the latest in a series of attacks against the Jewish community here, whether it's been the arson attacks in London or, of course, the appalling attack on the Heaton Park synagogue in Manchester. So what we've already done is increase policing resources. We're making an investment of £58 million in improving security, upping police patrols. But that's not enough because that is treating the symptom and not tackling the root cause. And so we have got to drive this vile ideology of anti-Semitism and the violence associated with it from our society. And that means taking action across all walks of life, rooting it out of our public services. We've changed the training, for example, in the NHS. We've got to take action in university campuses, in schools, colleges. We've launched a call for evidence this week, and we see there's a breeding ground, really, Trevor, isn't there, online as well.
Before we go on to that, I want to ask you about how you're going to do all of that. But can I just ask if we maybe should start with this? I understand why you say this is an attack on all, and people say that all the time, but it's not, is it? It's an attack on Jews. And if we are going to tackle this problem, perhaps it would be good to start by being absolutely clear. This is not a rhetorical question. This is Jews being hunted by people to harm them. Not the rest of us. It's Jews who are being attacked.
So I heard the Chief Rabbi this week also talking about the fact that all of us need to recognise...
Yeah, that's about what we all need to do. I'm just asking, shouldn't we just all stop pretending that this is a sort of general thing? It's specifically attacking one group of people, and they are called Jews.
So we have seen a rise in that over the last couple of months and in the last few years. And, obviously the events in the Middle East are playing out on our streets here. But that's why this government is absolutely determined to leave no stone unturned in taking the action that we have to root this evil out of our society. You've seen the Home Secretary earlier this year take a decision, for example, to ban the Al-Quds March. That's the first time in 14 years that has happened. We've also changed the law through the Policing Act that got royal assent this week to give more powers to the police to deal with cumulative impacts.
I want to come to demonstration, but can I just ask you about this? What did you make of the criticism of the police by Zach Polanski, for which he's now apologised?
I thought it was disgusting what he did and absolutely abhorrent. Those police officers ran towards danger. They were armed only with a taser that they had already discharged. The guy still had a knife in his hand. They were armed with their courage and their training. And I think for the leader of a political party to jump onto Twitter, start retweeting content, criticising those policemen who responded with incredible bravery in what was a very difficult situation, I think it demonstrates that the man is not fit to lead a political party.
Let's come on to the point you were making. The Prime Minister signalled that he might want to ban repeated marches in support of Palestinians and to restrict the language used by demonstrators. Look, maybe the law should be different, but so far no court has ruled that it's unlawful to, say, globalise the Intifada or from the river to the sea. Do you intend to make those words illegal?
So we have actually changed the law this week to give the police more powers to deal with protests, and I listened carefully to what the Prime Minister said in his interview in the last couple of days. And one of the points I thought it was fair that he made was if people are on protests about events in the Middle East, and they hear people chanting, "Globalise the Intifada," which, I understand for the Jewish community is about direct violence against them. The individuals on those marches have a responsibility to challenge it. And, I think it's right that the police take robust action against the use of that language. And I think that was the point that
the police have to act in accordance with the law. The law currently does not say that those words are illegal. If the Prime Minister means this, then you have to make those words illegal. Are you going to make those words illegal?
So the Home Secretary has instructed Lord Ken MacDonald to do a review of protests and in the UK that will be reporting back to the Home Secretary in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm sure, given the record of our Home Secretary in being willing to take the tough action that is necessary to keep everyone in our country safe, that she will be looking...
Including banning speech?
She will look at the recommendations of the review that Sir Ken MacDonald puts together.
But banning saying certain words is on the table?
So I haven't had a direct conversation with the Home Secretary about this in recent weeks, but I do know Shabana Mahmood well, and I know that she is not afraid to take tough decisions, and I think her action in banning that Al-Quds march earlier this year demonstrates that.
The former head of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, Kusha Faulkner, wrote yesterday that when members of the Muslim community commit violence against Jewish people for simply being Jewish, there are no mosque vigils or prayers, no loud hailers condemning the perpetrators. To their shame and mine, Muslims in Britain, she is a Muslim, appear entirely alienated from the plight of Jews when attacked. This silence speaks volumes. Some people say that the government is shying away from identifying the disproportionate cause in the rise of anti-Semitism to which you referred earlier, and she is pointing the finger pretty directly there. Do you agree with her?
Look, one of the reasons why the threat level in terms of national security was enhanced this week was because of the rise of Islamist ideology and linked to terrorist incidents and far-right linked terrorism as well. And so I heard Shabana Mahmood, a very high-profile Muslim politician, saying it's incumbent upon absolutely everyone in the country to speak out against this vile ideology of anti-Semitism, and for all of us to do absolutely everything we can to make sure that we stamp it out in all walks of life so that we don't see this appalling violence that we are seeing at the moment.
All right, look, everybody pretty much thinks that you're going to take a beating in Thursday's elections. I know you'll be fighting for every vote and so on, so we don't need to go through that. But could you, without listing your many achievements, tell us why you should keep the leader you have now?
So I think Keir is the best person to lead our country through the period of extreme international volatility that we are experiencing at the moment. And I don't think the public would thank us if the Labour Party turned into some sort of self-indulgent debating society when there are pockets of the world that feel like they are going to hell in a handcart at the moment. The Prime Minister at the moment is leading the efforts to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. Let's remind ourselves that 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas in normal times comes through the Strait of Hormuz on shipping vessels and oil tankers. And this has a direct impact upon life in the UK. It impacts the price that people pay at the petrol pumps, the energy bills that they will be paying in the winter, the price of an airline ticket and what they pay at the supermarket. And so, look, Trevor, forgive me, but I think asking the Prime Minister to somehow reapply for his job when all of that is going on and he is entirely focused on the concerns of the British people would be the wrong thing to do.
So the case is hold on to him because we live in this scary, difficult world. Do you say that the colleagues that you know are collecting signatures for potential leadership bid, registering websites and all the rest of it, are turning your party and government into a self-indulgent debating society, you said?
So, look, I think those people who think that we should have a leadership election now and repeat the mistakes that the Conservative government made in churning through prime ministers probably do need to give their head a gentle wobble at the moment, because in Keir Starmer, I see someone who is determined to take what he has learnt over the last 2 years of being Prime Minister and to build a stronger and fairer country for everyone. I see someone who is determined to make sure that every time a foreign war happens, that people in the UK aren't worried about what their energy bill is going to be in the winter.
I understand
and
that.
so, look, this is a serious man who wants to do the hard yards of serious government, and there are very serious international times at the moment that we are grappling with.
Are you sending that message to your colleagues across the Commons, Mr Streeting, Ms Rayner, and indeed Mr Burnham?
So I like all of the people that you have talked about there.
That's not I'm not asking you whether you like them. I'm asking if you're telling them the hard truth that you've just...
Well, I've just sat on national television,
It's directed
Trevor,
at them.
and this is about what the Labour Party needs to do to put the country first. We were elected in 2024 to deliver the change that the country was crying out for after COVID, Brexit, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and the 14 years of Conservative government. Change is going to take time, but I believe we're making the right decisions in the long-term interests of this country. Does that mean we get a dopamine hit, every couple of weeks? No, it doesn't. But does it mean that we are ultimately putting this country on the right path? Yes, I believe it. We are doing that.
Let's talk about the job, about your actual job. We're about probably about 4 weeks away from the global oil market hitting a crunch point because of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. And we're heading for the holiday season. You talk about consultations with the travel companies and so on, and changing to allow schedule consolidation, all of that stuff. They're ripping up the schedules. Shouldn't you just be straight with people and say, it is very likely that this holiday season will be disrupted?
I disagree with you, Trevor, actually, because I've spent every week of the last 2 months in close contact with airlines and airports. My colleague Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, has been doing the same with jet fuel suppliers. And on Thursday of this week, airlines told me very clearly that they have good visibility over the next 6 to 8 weeks of jet fuel supply. There is no current disruption to jet fuel supplies. Yes, global trading flows in jet fuel have changed significantly since the start of the crisis a couple of months ago. We are, for example, importing more jet fuel from America. We have asked the refineries in the UK to maximise their production. We've got 4 refineries here. Refineries in West Africa are also producing more. And so what I am doing through the consultation that we will be launching with airlines and the aviation sector this week is to give them more flexibility to plan in advance around trimming schedules, so that actually the last thing I want, Trevor, is for people to turn up at a departure gate and have last-minute cancellations and disruptions.
You've just said 6 to 8 weeks. That doesn't even get us to the start of the summer holidays. So what happens after that 6 to 8 weeks?
So if we were asking, we were having this discussion last year, the airlines would have told me exactly the same about their visibility of supply.
The point is, you can't promise that people can take their families away from the end of the school term, which is when it's really going to matter.
So what I want to do is give airlines flexibility so they can plan well in advance. And I am confident, sat here today, on the basis of the information that I have available to me, that the majority of people who are travelling this summer will have a similar experience to that which they had last year. This is an evolving situation, though, and so I think it is responsible for government to do sensible contingency planning, to enable the airlines to be responsible in how they set their schedules so that people aren't dealing with a last-minute text saying that you can't get your flight.
OK, you know I want to ask you this one last question, because I'm puzzled by this. There's a rail line between Oxford and Cambridge via Milton Keynes, which was supposed to kickstart a growth corridor, innovation, scientific development. It was completed in 2024. People have moved there. They've bought houses because they'd be able to commute and all the rest of it. But not a single passenger train has gone on that completed rail line in the 2 years since it was brought into operation. What are you guys doing?
So just to be clear, East West Rail, which will ultimately link Oxford to Cambridge, is being delivered in 3 stages. The first stage of that from Oxford to Milton Keynes is the part of the line that you're talking about. When this government came into power, first of all, we had to let a contract to a train operating company because the previous government hadn't done that, and then the general election
That happened ages ago. It's nearly 2 years on.
The other thing that needed to finish was the work on the stations, and there are discussions that are ongoing about the arrangements for operating the trains. Now, one of the other things that has changed, Trevor, just let me make this point, is that Universal Studios was also given planning permission. One of the stations on the new line, Stuart B, will serve Universal Studios when that development happens. And so the nature of the train line overall is changing, and the number of passengers that will be...
by the unions being stuck, aren't you? You can't get them to move. So you've got a line out there which is unusable.
No, what we're looking at is how we get the staffing right on the train, how we get all of the infrastructure in place so that the line can operate safely. That work is underway, and that's why I'm keen to see those services.
Why can't you just say the unions are stopping us putting trains to work that can take people to work? Why can't you just say that?
Because we're having a good conversation at the moment about how we staff the trains, whether they operate in driver-only control, and that's a discussion that we are pursuing via Chiltern, which will be the operator of East West Rail, because I'm keen, as anyone who's living around that line, to see services running as soon as possible.
All right. When you're next here, let's talk about the issue of delivery against your ambitions. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for your time.